Hello listeners, in this video let's discuss about Epithalamion, written by Edmund Spenser. Spenser was born in the year 1553 and he died at a very earlier age. He died in the year 1599. He's an English poet. He's basically known for his famous work such as The Shepherd's Calendar, The Fairy Queen, Amorati, Epithalamion. His poem Epithalamion is an ode which he actually writes for his second wife, Elizabeth Boyle. He writes this poem on their wedding day. They both married in the year 1594. He describes her in two of his poems, those are Amorati and Epithalamion. Here Spenser, he talks about the whole entire day of his wedding, from the time of his impatient waiting hours until the late night hours of the wedding day. That is, the poet spends his whole day anxiously waiting to marry Elizabeth Boyle. He describes his entire day in detail. In his poem, he has majorly praised his bride. His description of the day is described as both innocent and lustful. This poem totally has 24 stanzas. The mood of the poem is hopeful and thankful, and the set of the poem is on a sunny day. Let's see the stanza summary of the poem. In stanza 1, the poet, that is a groom, he calls upon the muses to inspire him to properly sing the praises of his beloved bride. Now, muses are an imaginary being or a force which will help someone with good ideas. Then Spenser says that he will sing for himself just as how Orpheus did for his own bride. Every stanza in this poem ends with the same line, that is the last line. The woods shall to me answer and my echo ring. The reference that Spenser made is Orpheus. Orpheus is an ancient Greek legendary hero. Orpheus has a superhuman musical skills. So here the poet Spenser, he hopes to awaken his bride from her slumber. Slumber is she's sleeping, leading her into the light of their wedding day. Stanza 2. In stanza 2, the day breaks. Here the groom urges the muses to head to his beloved's bower. Bower means a place, a shady place under trees. So he wants the muses to carry her under the tree, and so she will be awakened from her sleep. Then the poet wants to awake Hymen. Hymen is a god of marriage, and because the god of marriage has already awakened from his sleep, and the bride must also be awakened, then the groom, he instructs or urges the muses to remind his bride that this is her wedding day, on occasion that will return her great delight for all the pains and sorrows past. Stanza 3. The groom then instructs the muses to summon all the nymphs. Nymphs are a spirit in the form of a young woman which lives under woods, trees and rivers. So he wants to order the nymphs to come quickly next to the bridal chamber. So on their way they have to carry fragrant flowers and they have to decorate the path that is leading to the bridal bower where the marriage ceremony is going to take place. And if they do so, such as the groom has instructed, then the bride will quickly wake up from her sleep looking at the floral decoration. Then in stanza 4, he addresses the nymphs and the other natural locales. He asks them to make the day perfect. He also instructs the nymphs to keep the ponds and lakes clear without any lively fish, so that their reflections will be seen in the pond water. He also asks the nymphs to clear the mountain area and the woods area, to clear from all wolves and from wild animals. He says it is good to keep wolves away from the bride on the wedding day. In this stanza, he calls for two nymphs. One is nymphs who has to clean ponds and lakes. Another group is to clean and clear up the areas of mountain and woods. In stanza 5, the groom he himself addresses his bride to directly wake up from her sleep. The groom he points out the sunrise and the sun god. He points Phoebus. Phoebus is the sun god. He says like this, his glorious head, because sun is rising on that wedding day. So the birds are already singing and the groom is insisting their song is a call to joy directed to wake the bride from her sleep. In stanza 6, the bride has finally awakened from her sleep and her high eyes has to be lightened by the sun. He refers the sun as goodly beams, more bright than Hesperus. Hesperus is the daughters of delight, and he calls Hesperus to attend their wedding. Then the poet calls the three handmaids, and they are hours of day, hours of night, and the season. He also calls for Venus to attend the wedding as well. He then says the nymphs and the handmaids has to help her to wear her wedding dress. In stanza 7, the bride is ready with her attended virgins, and so now it is a time for the groomsmen and the groom himself to prepare himself for the day. The groom then implores the sun to shine brightly, but not hotly, lest because it may burn his bride's fairy skin. He then prays to Phoebus, who is both sun god and originator of the arts, to give this one day of the year to him while keeping the rest for himself. He then offers to exchange his own poetry as an offering for his great favor. In stanza 8, the mortal wedding guest and the entertainments move into action. The medieval singers and musicians, they play and they sing a song while women play their timbrels and they dance. Young boys run together the streets crying for the wedding song. They sing like this, Haman to Haman, Haman. And as they sing, everybody has to hear their song. And everybody who hears the song has to applaud and join with the boys for their song. In stanza 9, the groom then looks at his bride who's approaching and he compares her to Phoebe. Phoebe is another name for Artemis, who is the goddess of the moon, who's dressed in white. He refers her like this, that seems a virgin best. He finds her with her white attire, and that is appropriate like an angel than a woman. So he refers to modesty. He says that she avoids the gaze of the myriad admirers and blushes at the songs of praise she is receiving. In stanza 10, the groom asks every woman that whether they have seen any other woman who's so beautiful like her in the town. He then launches into a list of her virtues, starting with her eyes, and eventually he describes her whole body. Then the overwhelming praise of her body causes the maidens to forget their song and they started to stare at her beauty. In stanza 11, the groom moves from her external beauty of the bride and he moves to her internal beauty, which he claims to see better than anybody else. He praises her lively spirit. He praises her as sweet love. He praises her about her chastity, her faith, her honor, her modesty. The bride then insisted the observers to look at her inner beauty than her outward appearance. In stanza 12, the groom calls for the doors to the temple to be opened, that his bride may enter in and approach the altar in reverence. He then offers his bride as an example for the observing maidens to follow her, and she has to be approached to this holy place with reverence and humility. In stanza 13, the bride stands before the altar as the priest offers his blessings upon her and upon the marriage, she becomes happy. This causes the angels to forget their duties and they all encircle in that area, that is a marriage place, where the groom wonders why she should blush to give him her hand in marriage. In stanza 14, the Christian part of the wedding ceremony is over, and the groom asks the bride to be brought home again to celebrate their beginning of their life. He calls for feasting and drinking, turning his attention from the Almighty God. In stanza 15, the groom, he affirms that this day is a holy day and he calls everyone to celebrate in response to the ringing bells. And he also exalts the sun, saying that the sun is so bright and the day is so beautiful. Then he changes his tone by saying that he is getting married in a summer day because the summer days are longer, and so his night bliss will be delayed. Even in stanza 16, the groom, he continues his frustration by complaining that the day is too long, and he also addresses the evening that has started in the east. He says it as this fairy child of beauty, glorious lampy of low. In stanza 17, the groom urges the singers and dancers to leave the wedding quickly. He takes the bride to her bed as everybody departs. He is eager to be alone with his bride and compares the sight of her lying in the bed to that of Maya. Maya is the mountain goddesses with whom Zeus conceived Hermes. In stanza 18, at last night has arrived, and the groom asks night to cover and protect them. He makes another comparison. He makes mythological comparison. This time he takes Zeus' affair with alchemy. In stanza 19, the groom, he prays that no evil spirit or bad thoughts would reach the newlyweds that night. In this entire stanza, he lists some of the possible dangers that he pleads to leave them alone. Some of the dangers like superstitious fear of witches, ghosts, vultures, etc. In the 20th stanza, the poet wants to spend time with his beloved one, so he delays his sleep. In stanza 21, the groom notices Cynthia. Cynthia is the moon, which is the moon's rays comes inside the window, and he prays to the moon, asking her for the favorable wedding night. He also especially asks to protect her womb and to make her womb fertile that night. In stanza 22, the groom adds more deities to his list of patrons. He asks Juno, the wife of Zeus, and the goddesses of marriage to make their union strong and sacred. Then he turns her attention towards making it fruitful. He also asks favor from Hebe and Hymen to make her womb fruitful. In stanza 23, the groom asks everyone to pray together to all the gods in the heavens that they might bless their marriage. He then asks to give him large posterity that he may raise up generation of followers to ascend to the heavens in praise of the gods. He then encourages his bride to rest in peace and hope of becoming new parents. In the last stanza, the groom addresses his song with the charge to be goodly ornament for his bride, because he feels that she deserves many physical adornments as well. But unfortunately, time was too short to procure those outward decoration to decorate his beloved. So the groom hopes his ode will be an endless monument to her. Lastly, the poet ends the poem by saying that his beloved will be eternally remembered in his poetry. Hope you understood the explanation of the poem Epithalamion. If you have any suggestions of any topic, you can list it down on the comment section. Thank you for watching.